And what we find in the book of Genesis is the origin of paganism in Romanism. The greatest purveyor of paganism in religion that seeped into Christianity is in Romanism. Have you ever wondered why the Pope wears that big hat? Have you ever wondered why he carries around the staff? Have you ever wondered why all the different orders of monks and all the orders of the church, they wear all these different outfits? Where did the rosaries come from? Why are Roman Catholic Church filled with candles? Where did the Mass come from? Is purgatory in the Bible? I mean, all of these things, all of them clearly come from paganism. And historically, you can read, even in non-Christian literature, how all of that came into Christianity. But where did it start? Let's talk about it. Satan's church began officially at the Tower of Babel. When religion was popularized, now we had Cain, he was a rebel, but the Tower of Babel is when it was institutionalized. By the way, here's a great book. This is a book on Amazon written by Alexander Hislop, who spent years researching the archives of the museums of the world to find where all these names of all these religions and this, it's interesting, most of the religions of the world have a mother-son set of characters. A mother and a son. In fact, I'll show you in just a minute the list. And so this is his dissertation. He talks about the two Babylons, the one in Genesis 11 and the one in Revelation 17 and 18. And he says the papal worship proved to be the worship of Nimrod, and how we see that in the final world religion. So that's a good read, fascinating. But basically, this is how Paul puts it in 2 Corinthians 11:2. Before we get to Nimrod, let me read to you 2 Corinthians 11:2. For I am jealous for you, for I have betrothed you to one husband, that I might present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. But I fear lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. For if anyone preaches any other thing, and he goes through the gospel, and then look at verse 14, or verse 13. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. For Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. So basically what Paul's saying is, Satan's religions are headed by the angel of light who's trying to show you can go your own way, versus the true, chaste, pure, virgin bride of Christ. And that's why in Revelation 17, Satan's religion is compared to a harlot as opposed to the pure virgin. Okay, what is going on here? What did Alexander Hislop, in fact, you don't even need his book. You can look all this up. At the Tower of Babel, there was a guy named Nimrod. He's very famous, and he's the one that was the father of Babylon, and he built cities in the plains of Shinar. You remember, everybody spoke the same language, so we got everybody together, and they said, we're going to build a tower. You all know the story from Sunday school, that's going to reach to God. We're going to get to God our own way. We can do anything. It's kind of like humanism's ultimate. And his wife was named Semiramis, and she was a mother and had a son named Tammuz. You say, oh, that's all interesting. Yeah, let me tell you what happened. Tammuz was a really sharp guy, kind of one of those outdoorsy type. He was out hunting, and a wild boar with big tusks gored him, killed him, trampled him, and tore him apart. And poor Semiramis, his mother, he didn't come home for supper. She went out looking, and there were pieces of him all over. So she picked up all the pieces, put them in a basket, put a lid on the basket, and sat and mourned for him for 40 days. Now, this is a myth that is in almost all world religions. And after 40 days, he came back to life. Let me ask you, any of you that are former Catholics, what precedes what we call the Passion Week and Good Friday and Maundy, Thursday? What precedes that? The 40 days of what? Lent. Where's that in the Bible? What's 40 days in the Bible? 40 days and 40 nights it rained. Okay, that's not it. 40 days, Jesus is in the wilderness tempted. No, that's not it. Elijah was, where does the 40 days of mourning and Lent come from? Religions all over the world celebrated this period of time where the mother, by the way, the mother in Syria and Aramea is called Ishtar. In Phoenicia, Astarte or Ashtaroth. Now we got a Bible word there. The Israelites were always worshiping at the shrine of Ashtaroth, and in other places, Ishtar, which is Semiramis, it's just that person's name changes by whatever culture. How about Isis? Now we're in Egypt. Isis has a son, Osiris. In Egyptian mythology, Isis's son Osiris dies, she gets him, mourns him for 40 days, and he's resurrected. See, Satan has been filling the world with these false accounts to try and distract and confuse and get people to say, oh, there must be many ways to God. Now we get to Greece. Oh, who hasn't heard of Aphrodite? Her son is called Eros. And of course, Aphrodite is totally connected with the worship of sexual desire, and that's where the word erotic comes from the son's name. But it's the same thing, the mother-son worship. And then by the time we get to Rome, the Romans have named Semiramis, Ishtar, Astarte, Isis, and Aphrodite Venus in Rome, and her son is the fat little naked boy that always comes out at Valentine's Day. Remember one with the little bow and arrow, Cupid. And we think, oh, he's so cute. But he's in company with Eros, Osiris, Baal, Tammuz. Okay, so that's what's going on in the background. You say, I didn't know any of this was in the Bible. Well, that's because it's so hard to read the Old Testament because it's so long. But in the one book in the Old Testament that has the most words in Hebrew, Jeremiah is the longest worded book in the Old Testament, even longer than the Psalms. In the 44th chapter, God indicts Israel because they are worshiping the Queen of Heaven. He said, you're making little cakes and bowing down to the Queen of Heaven. Who's the Queen of Heaven? The Queen of Heaven is Semiramis. And they were worshiping her during the 40 days, awaiting the resurrection of her son Baal. God didn't like that. He said, that's the old pagan religion from the Tower of Babel. That's Satan's find your own way to God thing. So, let's get back to Revelation 17. Who is the woman on the beast that we just read about with that name on her and everything? Well, she is the apostate church of all human religions. Apostate because all religions are going away from the original truth of God. God revealed himself. He came and showed himself to Adam and Eve. And he came and showed himself to Cain and Abel and talked to them. And he came and showed himself to, as you know, Abraham. And we can go, and Noah, of course, before Abraham. And on we go. So everybody that's denied it is apostasia. They've fallen away from the original. That's what an apostate is. They apostasis. They go away from the standing, the original. So, now, I personally believe the tribulation's apostate church will be some form of the Roman Catholic Church, because there has to be a Christian component, merged together with all the other world religions. Now, this is fascinating. You ever seen one of these coexist bumper stickers, You usually don't see them in color. But this coexist thing is very popular. Usually they have the peace symbol on that bumper sticker and, I like pot or something like that, but you'll see these all over the place when you're driving. Now remember, Satan's goal is abandon God's way, then make your own way to God. The coexist thing says if we could just get the monotheistic religions, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, so you notice that they're kind of like the anchors and the center pole, to merge with the yin-yang kind of peaceful Steve Jobs of Apple. Remember, he was a Buddhist. Most of us don't realize that some of the most famous entertainers and technical people and kind of the wizzo people are anti-God, very much so. With science, I mean, you know what the word science means? That's a Latin word, scio. Scio means, in Latin, I know. So science is what I know. So that means if I know something, it's supposed to be based on observable, reproducible, you understand, experimentation. Yet what do we call the primary scientific underlying paradigm for our society? The theory of evolution. But guess what they've conveniently dropped? You don't hear the first two parts of that anymore. You'll never hear it on the news. You never hear about the theory of evolution. You just say evolution. It's no longer a theory. It's a fact because it's scientific. It's scientific, okay? Let me give you a scientific experiment here. Do we have enough minutes? I have a device here that's made of aluminum and silica. I found this when Bonnie and I were hiking the Great Wall of China. We were just crossing the Gobi Desert, and it was just sitting there, and I thought, wow, must have taken over 6 billion years for that to evolve. I never thought that Apple made it because we don't need a creator. Everything that's highly technical, like our human body, evolves, right? It would be like saying, I didn't find this. We did hike the Great Wall of China, but I didn't find it there. I'm just saying it's as absurd to say an iPhone evolved. How about a 747? That used to be the most complex airplane in the world. Let's use a 787. Could a 787 ever evolve? With its hydraulic system, with its electronic system, with its avionics, with its atmosphere exchange system, with all the parts of it, right down to the windows that change, you know, the light in them and the dimness and everything is so neat about a 787. Everyone knows the 787 was made in Everett, Washington by Boeing, right? And everybody knows that this was made in Chengdu, China, by Apple. But when you come to the far more complex item, there is no way it was designed and created by God. And see, that's science is no longer science. Observable truth that is reproducible and testable. It's been dominated by the God of this world, who is the smartest. And he says, if I can just get people to think, if it's scientific, it must be right. I'm a total advocate of science. I mean, I'm a scientist. My first scholarship, when I was your age, a little younger than you, I worked in high school. My science fair project was in 1973. My science fair project was the data transmission that is possible over ruby-based lasers. Okay? I love science. And I got a scholarship to MIT in Boston, Newton, in Massachusetts, because that was on the cutting edge. So I love science and oceanography and everything else. But Satan wants people to believe that Islam is one way to God, Buddhism is kind of an interesting way if you're rich or from the Asia, or you can be the scientific way to God, or you can be like the Jews, or you can go back to nature and paganism and Gaia and mother worship, or Wiccan, which is witchcraft, or you can be one of those Christians. But don't be a real Christian, because they're offensive, okay? Now this was interesting. Last November, or October, November, I don't remember which it was, Bonnie and I were teaching in Rome, and we took a field trip with our students up to Florence, and from Florence, which is church history, we went to Assisi. I've always wanted to go to Assisi, you know, St. Francis of Assisi. And we came across this. It's called the Peace Garden. Now, I looked and looked for good pictures. I was so taken up I didn't take good pictures. But this is a 4-column with a bell in the middle. This is what's on the bell. The Peace Bell of Assisi, named Regina Pacis. The world religions announce peace using one voice. The signers of this bell were, for the Buddhists, the Dalai Lama himself in 2001 said, I agree. And in 2003, Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. Does that ring a bell? That's Pope Benedict, the the one that's still around and retired, and he's living in Rome, unless he died recently, but I don't know. He's the one that retired. And then for Islam, the Al-Hazar of Cairo, and for the Jews, Yonah Metzger. And so we have Buddhism, Christianity, as in Roman Catholicism, Islam, and Judaism there represented. Now, what I thought was neat was, and I'll only show you a little bit of this, I took a movie. This surrounds that. And what it is all of these are things that have been sent. This was sent by the Jews. It's a little picture of the Ark of the Covenant, and this comes from those that are still into the Greco pantheon, and on. You can see Mesoamerican stuff and Aztec stuff and Native American stuff, but let's see if it'll go. Oh, here I am walking. And the first thing you see is with Taoism, and then you see the Greco-Roman stuff, and there's the Jews. These are different religions that are contributing to the peace garden. And the Roman Catholics put the mother-son thing. And then we've got all these Easter, there's John Paul II himself. And then we've got the Aztecs, we've got the Incas, we've got this from the Minoans right there, the labyrinth that's in Gnosis, and then Easter Island statue. And what they're saying is, all roads lead to God. Abandon God's way and make your own way. So how's that going to play out in the future? Well, I just clipped this from Newsweek. That's an American news magazine. Saturday, March 18th, mosque, synagogue, and church are being built side by side in Abu Dhabi. Part of the Abrahamic Accords, that we can all get along. And think about this. There's room. Those of you that just got back from Israel, if you've ever spent the time, this is the Eastern Gate. This picture is taken from the Mount of Olives. The Kidron Valley is between where I'm standing and the Eastern Gate there. This is Al-Aqsa Mosque. Southern steps are right there. So there's the Al-Aqsa. Look, there are two spaces. You could put up some kind of a Christian church. We've already got the existing Dome of the Rock in Al-Aqsa. And guess what there's room for right here? The temple where it should be. Because when Josephus was standing with the armies of Rome, he looked through the Eastern Gate and saw the Holy of Holies, the high part of the temple. So probably the temple was really right there. This is, of course, the Antonian Fortress area. But there's room for all of them up there. So Islam and Judaism and Christianity, and probably that's what Satan is going to propose through his emissary, the Antichrist.